Hi guys, Svetlana Sotak here, and today I'm going to show you how to make fabric handles for your tote bags. Now these sturdy handles are super easy to make as there's absolutely no need of turning any long tubes of fabric right side out, and you probably have all the materials you need on hand already. Now I'm going to make handles for my chubby tote bag, which is a free tutorial on my YouTube channel, and I will put a link to the tutorial in the description below, but you can use the knowledge I'm going to share with you here to make pretty much any width or length of the handle you need. It's super easy to adjust. And also, another thing that I really love about these handles is that you can customize them to your bag because you get to choose which fabric you're using for your handles. So let's start, shall we? As I already mentioned, I'm going to be making handles for my chubby tote bag, and the finished handles that I need are going to measure 3/4 inches wide by 16 inches long, or if you're using centimeters, they're going to be 2 centimeters wide by 41 centimeters long. Now I'm going to use Essex Linen for my handles, but quilting cotton will work well just fine. I will also use medium weight fusible interfacing. This one is Pellon SF101, but any other medium weight interfacing of choice will work as well. Now to cut your handle, you will need the length of the handle that we already mentioned. So in my case, it's 16 inches or 41 centimeters. And as far as the width of the handle goes, I need 4 times the width of the finished handle. So if this is 3/4 inches wide, I need to cut this panel to be 3 inches wide, or it's 2 centimeters wide. So this panel is going to be 8 centimeters wide. Okay, so the width is always the width of your finished handle times 4, and the length is just the length that you need. And you will need 2 fabric panels for the handles. So mine are 3 inches tall by 16 inches wide. And you will need 2 panels of medium weight interfacing that are exactly the same size. So again, 3 inches wide by 16 inches long, or 8 centimeters wide by 41 centimeters long. Now, when I make my handles, I usually try to decide on what thread I'm going to use for stitching my handles. Now, as you can see, this handle is perfectly fine, looks lovely. I used coordinating thread, just a standard universal thread like this Gutermann polyester thread, and it almost disappeared into my handles, which works really well sometimes when you don't want the thread to be competing with the fabric you're using. Sometimes though, you might want to use a little bit more prominent thread like I used for this handle right here. And in this case, I used my favorite dual duty heavy thread. Now, when I use this thread right here, I only put it in the top of my sewing machine and still use just the universal thread in the bobbin. But when I use it, I always go with a slightly thicker needle. Organ needles are my favorite for my sewing machine, and I usually go with either 90-14 or 116 size needle to make sure that this thicker thread fits through the eye of the needle well. Now, I found out for my sewing machine, I don't actually need to do much for the tension as far as when I use 2 different thicknesses of the thread, but I would recommend that you just give it a try, do a sample stitching before you do any sewing on your handle. I'm going to start making my handles by placing it right side down on my pressing board. Now, as you can see, I'm using Essex Linen, which doesn't have wrong or right side. So either side is okay for me, but if you are using quilting cotton, make sure your quilting cotton is right side down. And then you place your interfacing sticky or fusible side down right here. So this is a sticky bumpy side right here. And then fuse your interfacing in place using hot iron on cotton setting and a lot of steam. Now that the interfacing is fused nicely to your handle, fold it in half lengthwise, like so. First finger press, make sure everything is neatly lined up, like that. And now again, use your hot iron to press this fold, make it nice and crisp. Right. Now, when you're working with your handle, be careful because everything gets really hot. So you want to give it a little bit of time to cool down, just a tiny bit, before you handle it again. Now, open up your handle and fold the long raw edge towards the middle fold. Now, I don't like to bring it all the way to the middle fold. I leave about like 1/16 of an inch right here, or 1 millimeter before the middle point, like that. And again, I'm going to finger press it first, just to make sure it lies nice and flat when I go and use the iron, like so. And now make the seam nice and crisp again. And I'm going to do on the other side the same thing. So now I have my middle crease right here, and I creased both long raw ends towards the middle, and I'm going to fold the handle in half like that. And as you can see, I try to hold my fingers right here in the middle and help everything lie nice and flat as I'm closing it right here. I don't want any puckers or tucks in my fabric. And I'm just going to press it one more time to make sure it stays nice and flat. So you see, this is what the handle looks like at this point. Now this is the width, 3/4 of an inch, or 2 centimeters. And that's exactly the width of the handle we need. And I'm now going to use my sewing clips to hold the raw edge together, like so. You could use pins if you wanted for this step. I like sewing clips because they don't distort the fabric for me right here. And now I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and show you how I top stitch. So before we start stitching, let's go over a few details. So as I mentioned before, I'm using a heavy thread in the top of my machine and a standard universal polyester thread in my bobbin. I also adjusted the length of my stitch to 2.75 on my Juki machine to make it slightly longer than my usual stitch. And I'm using just a standard presser foot on my machine. You could use a walking foot for top stitching if you wish. Now, I'm going to stitch along this edge right here first, the open edge, and I'm going to use 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now, before I start stitching though, I will hold these two tail ends of the thread in my hand, as I found out this prevents from any knots forming on the back of my handle. Now, the really important thing to remember is you need to find the kind of speed that works well for you. You don't want to speed up and slow down much when you're top stitching, because then the length of your stitches might change, and that wouldn't look so pretty. And also, if you need to stop, make sure you always stop with your needle down. So in the needle down position, if you need to stop and readjust your hands or your handle. Okay, so let's start stitching. I'll be removing my clips as I come closer to them. So I've come to the end of my handle. I usually like to pivot it, come over this way over the short end, and then start stitching along this other long end. And as you can see, I'm not really doing anything with my handles. I'm not pulling or tugging on my handle. my hands are there just to guide the handle. So they're kind of in a stable position and the handle slides through them. Okay, now we have 2 stitches on each side, and you could totally leave a handle like that if you wish. I usually like to add another set of stitching on each side, going about 1/4 inch away from each edge. All my stitching is done. Just trim off any extra thread, and here is my finished handle. Now, as you can see, I used a thicker thread on the top side, so the stitches are nice and prominent. You can see them here. You can't see them as much on the back side because I used just a standard universal thread right here. And now just go ahead, make a second handle, and then you're ready to add it to your bag. I hope you found this tutorial useful and will enjoy making your own custom handles to add to your handmade bags. Bye!